afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Grassroots Education Advocacy with me, your host, Zakiya Sankara-Jabar. And I am excited about today's show. As you know, our organization at Brightbeam and the Citizen Ed platform have been talking about this campaign for Internet for All since COVID-19 really hit and took over the world, not just our country. So education in this moment has really shifted and is continuing to evolve. However, before that, we know that technology in and of itself has been an issue, particularly for Black children and Black students and in largely Black-led or Black school districts in our country. And so today we have several guests, Black women who are technologists, who are working in the field of technology in different areas, who we will actually hear from them directly their expertise and what we should be doing, not to just create internet for all and access to broadband, but how we can really be building up tomorrow's leaders, Black leaders in technology, to be creators, to be innovators, and what we can be doing to make sure that Black children have access to that kind of thinking. So it's a both and conversation today. Sure, we need our children to have internet access, but we also want to make sure that young people can see themselves as technologists. So I'll take a moment and read a little bit about each one of my guests. Again, really excited to have them here, excited to have Black women who are have expertise in this field. So this conversation is going to still be very conversational, but also kind of technical. And so I'll be learning right along with you as the audience, learning from these women about the amazing work that they do. So first I'll introduce Melissa Obi. She is a senior network engineer, cybersecurity, network vulnerability, infrastructure, and security services. Wow. I can't wait to hear about all of that. We also have Barbara Mettle-Olympio, founder and client service manager at B Branding Solutions, and I believe she's joining us from the United Kingdom. We also have Nikki Scott, who is a media director and secretary of the Black Star Action Network International. So we're going to just sit back. We're going to have an overview of this conversation. Again, as I framed it earlier, not just internet for all or access to internet, but making sure that we're creating a pipeline of young people and technologists to be able to join in on innovation. Melissa, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your journey in becoming a cyber network security person. Tell us about it.
Well, my journey is a little different from others. I used to be a sales engineer on the actual sales side of the network space. And I was, one of the best salespersons they had, and I was taking all of these courses where you can get your certification. Although my degree is in marketing, this is how I know that our people can do this. So when I decided to go on the engineering side, I sent in my resume, I interviewed, and I got the job. Well, I had never even touched any of the equipment. I could talk the talk. I could talk highly technical, but I wasn't technical. I never touched a router, switch, never saw a transport layer, circuit, fiber cabling, any of that, firewall, load balancers, none of that. I never touched any of that equipment. Couldn't even configure it. Didn't know what it was, knew about it. So I was trained on the floor, and my first job was at MCI and their Network Operations Center. And I remember I sat between two of the best engineers in the world. At that time, there were only 7 CCIEs in the nation, and all of America, and MCI had all 7 of them, which is how I ended up going to get my CCIE, Cisco Certified Network Expert. So they trained me, and I became one of the best engineers that ever walked through the doors of MCI. And that's my story,
That's an amazing testimony. And yeah. I appreciate, you telling us this because, as you and I talked in prepping, for this show, I was, just sharing just about the frustration that I hear from a lot of the activists in our network. Mm-hmm. There are kids in our communities who literally don't have broadband access, or if they were trying to sign up, for the Comcast $9.99 package deal, some of those families were not able to sign up because they had past due bills, and there's just all kinds of barriers. The other thing that you and I talked about was just the barrier in science and technology for young people, even when school, before COVID, right? How young people,
Right.
and Black students in particular, were not encouraged, if you will, to learn about the different opportunities. And I've been talking about this, and I think that's why I reached out to you, but I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, just my frustration in terms of we're living through a technological revolution. Like, we have companies like Tesla. The social networks have taken over. This is the future. And I'm concerned because I don't see enough Black faces. I'm not sure if any of you had an opportunity to watch The Social Network Dilemma or whatever it is on Netflix, but that really opened up my eyes to, wow, here we are, just like the Industrial Revolution, not really being encouraged or allowed to be a part of this new innovation that we're all living with, and COVID-19 has exacerbated, to me, the acceleration of it. Nikki, I want to pivot to you. Can you share a little bit more, about yourself and about the work that you do currently, and how you're working to encourage more of a pipeline that includes Black students in fields of technology? I also want to preface it as well for the other two guests, that we can talk about different career opportunities that don't require a 4-year college degree, that our kids can be going into making 6 figures right out of the gate.
That's true. I wanted to lightly touch on, though, something that you had mentioned, and that was about the documentary Social Dilemma, because I sat down and I had my children watch it with me. And I asked them, was there anything in particular that stuck out to them in the documentary? So one of them said it, and I was so glad that he had picked up on that, was that all of the people that they had interviewed, that they were white and primarily male. And as someone who works at a research institute, I see it, and that is why it was such a great concern of mine. And even when there is an effort to try to correct that imbalance, they usually do it from a point of view of gender. So they want to include more women, but then what happens is then you have more white women who are participating in the field. But it's never the diversity that they're pushing is never a racial diversity. It's more of a diversity that's based upon gender. So that's was my major concern. As I said, working at a research institute and seeing all of these conferences, and I'm talking about global conferences, people coming from Europe, from all over the world, from China, from India, and there's never any Black presence. There's never Black people that are represented, even with the science education centers, when there are these robotics competitions and students come from all over the world. They're represented from Australia. It doesn't matter. There's never a Black presence. And so that concerned me. And one of the reasons that I have found is that much of it has to do, and Melissa and I talk about this all the time, is the socialization of our people. And I see it working at an institute because there are all of these programs and science educational programs that are specifically geared towards STEM, and they start at very early ages. But one of the ways that they lock us out is that these schools and these programs, they're not affordable, so they're not accessible to our people. And I started to see the parallel in the situation with the Ethiopian children here in Israel, and how it mimics, it's completely identical to the situation that our children are experiencing in the United States. And then a study that I read, came out in, I believe it was 2015, a study which was conducted in the UK that also saw these same disparities within the community there with Black children And so it's a global dilemma that we're experiencing. It's not something that's, exclusive to Black children in the United States. And again, much of that has to do with the way that our children are socialized. And I'm going to touch on that a bit later. I don't want to take up too much time. I want to give the other panelists an opportunity to speak, but I do really want to go into that socialization, how our children are socialized into certain fields of study and pushed away from sciences, because it's a serious issue. It's a serious problem.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to come back around to you on that, because the socialization piece is critical. And I noticed that too with the social network. And I'm just like, I've never even heard of these job titles, like the job titles and they were basically all men. Vast majority were white men, but some of them were, I guess, East Indians or from like India or whatever. So I noticed that too in the social network documentary. Very, very interesting. Barbara, I want to pivot to you and just, offer your reflections, based on what we're talking about here in terms of this global socialization of Black children or African children who are not encouraged to be innovators in the space of technology. Certainly in this century, this is the technological century, and we're living through, again, I believe that COVID-19 has accelerated this entire technological revolution. But I would just love to hear your perspective and how things look for you in Europe.
Okay, thank you, firstly, for having me. And so my perspective, I guess, is double-edged from a European side and also the African perspective as well. For me personally, growing up, I wasn't encouraged to go into tech. My mom wanted me to go into law. My elder brother actually went into network engineering, cybersecurity, that kind of thing. He was even forced to go into that, whereas I was told to go into law that would suit me more. So I kind of fell into this industry through writing, because I used to write a lot. I used to, read a lot as well, write articles and short stories. And then gradually I fell into communications, marketing through that. And then I started developing websites on the side, literally for the fun of it, because I used to play a game called The Sims. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but there's an aspect of it where you can actually modify things in the game, modify things and upload it into the game. So that's what I just got hooked on. And then that's kind of how I found my way into tech. So I think going back to Nikki's point about the socialization, I don't think it's a gender thing, and it's also a race thing, because our parents are, gender. My brother was encouraged to go into that, whereas I wasn't, because I was the girl. It's a race thing as well, because I think from an African perspective anyway, we still have this sense of a sales-based industry where we think that, you need to go into sales, products, things like become a lawyer, a doctor. Those were the industries and those were the sort of jobs that were encouraged, because if you want to go way back into colonialism, those were the jobs that were promoted and seen as, being a part of success, and also how we were taught through the missionary schools as well. So all these things, all these kind of nuances add to that. So I feel that from a European, I think things are changing here. Yeah, things are changing a bit here. There are still pockets of the UK whereby, certain areas in London, especially, where there is a lot of poverty and deprivation, especially amongst the Black youth. And in more recent times, through austerity, I think young white people are also facing it. In fact, through recently austerity as well, there have been cuts in, certain social services, certain groups, especially for Black children. So these things haven't been running as well. So I think from an African perspective, we need to, speaking from the continent, specifically Ghana, West Africa, there needs to be a shift in terms of the sort of job prospects, because tech doesn't pay well. I mean, if you go into development, app development, there is a sense that you can get a good job if you're freelancing. However, mainstream, if you work for an organization, the salary isn't too great. There's still this, yeah, it's really not.
That's interesting, because I think that's a contrast, if I'm not mistaken, from the United States. A lot of at least, what's perpetuated is that people who work in certain technological fields, and particularly, I believe, especially with social networks, those are well-paid positions at Google, at Facebook, at Twitter, all of these different kind of behind the scenes where they're building the platform and building the interface and all of that. Those have been marketed as well-paying jobs that you don't need a college degree for, at least in the United States.
Yeah, so there's still the perception that even digital marketing, well, it's like what we term here in the UK as Mickey Mouse degrees, is these kind of, yeah, that's the terminology. It's these kind of degrees that it's not anything to do with medicine, it's not anything to do with law, so it doesn't carry that weight in it. So the pay scale is not great unless you're freelancing and you have organizations or companies based outside of predominantly Africa. And the interesting thing is that there is a lot of talent in Ghana as well, and you tend to get a lot of Western organizations coming in and at times taking advantage of that talent because we don't value it.
Wow, that's so interesting, to hear the contrast and how things are operating in other countries from both the European and African perspective, and certainly want to hear more about that from you, Barbara. And thank you for sharing. Tiffany, welcome. So glad that you're able to join us. Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulties earlier, but you're here with us now, and we're happy to have you. Can you share a little bit more about your work as a founder of the Emerging Ladies Academy?
Sure. So Emerging Ladies Academy, we're a nonprofit. We empower Black girls in technology. We started providing after-school programming in 2017 to one of the largest public school systems in Omaha, Nebraska. So we have been providing after-school programming to about 5 middle schools throughout since 2017. Recently, in October, we created a all Black girls coding program coined She Code. So within 6 months, they'll be junior software developers. They'll learn how to create mobile apps and websites and learn some computer programming as well. We're really excited to bring this to Omaha. We don't have any, we have lack of diversity within our tech system as well, ecosystem as well. So this is new, this is exciting for our community. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you share a little bit more, and this is for me and our audience, about the different fields of study, Tiffany, that you are training these young ladies into? So can, like, the 3 different items that you share, can you share a little bit more of a descriptor in what kind of jobs can these young people have if they decide to go into that in the future?
So with She Code, with coding, they can develop their own website. So you can be a freelancer. I'm really promoting entrepreneurship. That's one of our pillars of education. So you can create your own mobile apps. You can be a creator. You can be a freelancer, entrepreneur. They can go into those tech fields if they want to, those careers, but I'm really trying to promote entrepreneurship. We need to create a space that is our own.
That's music to my ears. I'm with you. I do think that is something that we should be doing as well, collectively. And certainly, if, like you said, if young people decide that they want to go and work at another tech institute, then that's fine as well. But I love the fact that you're at least encouraging entrepreneurship. The other 2, what were the other 2 that you named? I know you named coding, and then you said computer science. And was there
Emerging Ladies Academy, we focus on 3 tracks: computer science, engineering, and biomedical science. So She Code is in the computer science track. We're looking to develop more programming under that track, but that's just the easiest educational tool we felt like we could use. I do have 2 instructors from our local community college that have created the curriculum, and it's based off their the college classes that students take there. So we wanted to make sure we were starting off with something accessible and easily learnable for the girls, because we are dealing with girls that are 10 years old all the way up to 18 years old. And this is new material. So we wanted to make it as basic as possible and then springboard off of that.
Amazing. Appreciate that. Melissa, wanted to pivot back to you if we can hear you. Can you share a little bit more about the African-centered technology idea that you and I talked about? I think that that's certainly a new concept. They're not new concepts separately, but I believe together that's a newer concept and something that really intrigued me.
Okay. So Nikki and I had been discussing this, the gap that we see in Black children understanding and accepting and wanting to be in technology. And what we notice is it's not just the socialization, it's also the benign neglect, the systemic institutional neglect of forcing and keeping Black children out of technology purposely, because of course, we know technology can be the great equalizer. It can close the economic gap.
Talk more about that, closing the economic gap through technology.
Right.
Can you lean into that a little bit? Because I think that probably perked up a lot of people's ears.
Sure. Because as we know, these technology jobs pay a lot of money. And you don't have to waste your time going into a four-year university. And what African-centered technology is going to do is we're going to have an approach as a continuing adult education class. You will have your high school kids come in, middle school age kids come in, and we will teach them how to design, implement a network infrastructure, all of the core backbone components, how to design them, how to configure them, how to segment the network, understanding different types of security protocols that go into that. And that way, when they come out of school, all they have to do is get a certification and they're hired. They've not spent a lot of money on college, getting themselves in debt. You can take introduction to a network course at a community college for $189 and get a 75% off voucher to go in and take the certification test that would normally cost you $300 and upwards to take the certification test. And as soon as you put that certification, those letters on your resume, trust me, you will be hired. Because the thing is, there are not enough Black engineers. There are not enough engineers in America, period. If you really want to talk about the biggest scope of the picture, which is why they're always recruiting engineers out of India. I know Cisco has a huge presence in India. And you can go to Cisco Academy, boot camp, fly with a flight ticket from America into India, feed yourself for 3 months, as opposed to paying the price it would cost you to do it here in America. Imagine that. So wow. We're locked out purposely.
It's a lockout purposely. In terms of the African-centered program that you're building out, and certainly you don't feel free to share what you'd like, because I don't want anybody to steal your idea. I do think that it's critical. No, seriously, I do think that it's critical, especially in this moment. For me, since COVID-19, I've been doing a lot of research, and I've been researching not just technology but economic markets. And one of the things that I noticed with the economic markets in this downturn, I think there's been articles like, damn, how did Jeff Bezos become a billionaire and everybody is out of work and everybody is out of money and there's homelessness? And when you look at the market and the stocks, right? We talking about stocks, but when you look at the stocks that didn't really decline very much, and I'm talking about more than 12%, they were all tech stocks.
Right.
That's critical information to connect the dots.
Right. The technocratic industry is running America. If you look at all of their stock prices are through the roof. Which is why we need to be creating our own technology companies as well. We need to be facilitating that. We need to be designing spaces where we can design and implement and become some of the world's biggest innovators, and then build, network, and sell products back and forth between ourselves and the continent, you know? And I know that a lot of the places in Africa are now using a lot of cellular because they don't really have the infrastructure for hardwired networks and big cloud technology with huge data centers where a lot of companies can outsource their network to. And I find that that's what a lot of European companies are going into Africa and doing. They're building that brand for themselves over there. And I think that that's something that we can take charge of and we can head up ourselves as well.
I wanted to acknowledge that we do have a very vibrant Facebook community. And so folks are excited. They're listening to this conversation. And it looks like we have a question that came in from our audience. So as I had shared prepping for this, our audience are teachers, they're parents, they are mostly African-American community, they're administrators, they're all kinds of people, and they're very interested in education justice. And so one of these questions that just came in to the audience, and you all can take your turn and how you like to answer it, is this question says, are we missing an opportunity to utilize online environment in developing our children in these technological areas?
I would say so, but that's going to be our approach at African-Centered Technology. We're going to utilize the social media sites to its fullest potential, you know, and we're also going to be having we're starting a program called Talk Tech to Me, you know, where we'll have technology courses for free. You know, we're building that brand and we'll be launching that sometime in January, where you can learn the basics of technology, networking, interland networking 101, because you can't move into any of the other spaces. I don't know about the application side of the house because I support the equipment that the applications run on. So, you know, but in doing so, there's definitely a big niche for these kids to learn networking from the bare bones transport layer all the way up to the applications layer. So that's our goal.
I think
Go ahead, Tiffany.
I think there's a huge opportunity for our youth to engage in online learning. When the pandemic hit, we were in class providing sheet code, and then we had to pivot into Zoom, into an online environment, and it went very well. It's going very well now. It's just trying to find the balance in remote learning at home for school, and then creating those extracurricular activities or programs for the youth and what's important to you. So that has been a gap for me, trying to engage our community in technology education. And not just being users of our users of the Facebook and social media, but being creators. And I think there is a definite disconnect with that. We can be users all day long, but we're not creating, and how lucrative that can be if you learn how to create a mobile app. You know, so it's the level of what do you value? What's your educational value? You know, and talking to parents about why technology is important. They're like, well, they're online all day long, but they're once again using it. You know, so we need to.
We're consumers of it. We're all using it. We all got smartphones. Like we're all consuming everything that's made. The other piece that I wanted to bring up to you guys is, I'm not sure if you all are familiar with some of the kind of evolving, burgeoning work around race and technology. I know that there's some scholars out there who have written and did research about technology companies and apps, and you know, these different tracking devices that they're using are also, the code is also racist, so to speak. So there's a book out called Algorithms of Oppression. Can any of you speak to that and some of the dangers that maybe even in the community that they've been on the receiving end of, you know, some of these algorithms of oppression, and maybe there's some fear in even getting involved in technology based on that? I'm not saying that is right or wrong, but just wondering if you all can speak to racism in the industry as well. Nikki,
Well,
we
I
haven't heard from you. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, so when creating these algorithms for surveillance, a lot of these police departments and justice agencies use these algorithms to target, our people. The highly surveillance, artificial intelligence, they have made drones that are so small that they can infiltrate a very, very small space, and you would think it's just a mosquito, a bee or something, and it's actually a drone recording everything that you're doing, especially when you're out protesting in these protest spaces. Which is why a lot of people started using satellite phones and encrypted phones and going off of, the mainstream network. But, a lot of times they have technology out there that breaks that encryption. So we need to build a space where we can do the same thing.
What is encryption?
Well, encryption is a security language. It's a security language that safeguards the data. That's what it does. It keeps people from hacking into your network. We have quantum encryption, and it keeps someone from being able to collect any data on you. It blocks that person out or that hacker out.
Nikki, did you have any thoughts on that? Are you familiar with the book Algorithms of Oppression?
No, I'm actually not familiar with the book.
Okay.
However, I am familiar with the concept and built-in bias in algorithms.
Because code in and of itself is, while it's technology, somebody is building it, and there's assumptions from the person who is building the code. Is the argument, is the basis of that book.
Can I just touch on a very
absolutely, please hop in.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the book either, but I know, speaking in general in the UK here, something that happened in the last few weeks was when they announced the exam results. Naturally, because of COVID-19, all the students weren't going to school, and those that were due to sit their exams in the summer didn't get the opportunity to do so. So they had to use predicted grades. And an issue that came up with these predicted grades was the fact that, well, some teachers may be biased against Black students and assume that they wouldn't perform as well. So they would downgrade them. And the Department for Education, the government here, used an algorithm to assess what they thought a student's predicted grade was going to be. And based off of that, what was highlighted in the results was that it really comes down as well to the area in which you live. So if you live in an area where the schools are generally good, smaller class sizes, and students tend to perform better, which would be predominantly white areas, then chances are that your grades, even if you don't perform as well, if you were due to not perform as well in the exams, because of the school that you're in and the caliber of the students, your grades would generally go up. So if you were Black and you were going to school in a more deprived area, then even if you were, had you sat the exams, if you were to come out with A's or whatever, but because of the area in which you live, your grades would have been down, your grades would have come down significantly. And again, there's that bias with the teachers. As you mentioned, somebody has to code that algorithm. So the teachers had to be the ones to, make the assumption of what they thought you would get. So I think it goes back to Tiffany's point that we have to be the creators, not just the consumers of these technologies. We need to have that space where we create these things. And the more diverse, I guess, the more diverse the creators of these technologies are, the more likely that the imbalance will be addressed. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that.
I appreciate that. Really quickly, I got to respond to this because I'm shocked that they're doing predictive grades. What? Like, they built an algorithm to predict the grades without actually assessing the children themselves. Just predict it based on zip code, based on all of these arbitrary kind of identifiers.
Well, not just zip codes, but zip codes do have an effect because it was based on the performance of the school in general. Because all the public schools are rated, all the schools, in fact, are rated here in the UK. You're either outstanding, good, or poor. And those that are generally outstanding are based in the good areas. And the good areas are, are inhabited by predominantly white or wealthy middle class people. So naturally, if you live in that area and you're going to school in that area, your predicted grades are likely to be good, even if the teacher assumes that you may not have gotten a good grade. But because of the rest of your cohort, the rest of the people that live in your area, the students, because their grades are generally good anyway, because you school in an area that is good and you're going to an outstanding school, it's likely that your grades are going to be good anyway, whether you try or not. So
Interesting. That's very interesting. Nikki, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on that, and something that you had brought up earlier, the racial bias, it definitely exists, but also when you would pose the question about why African-centered technology, and that is our focus of our organization, is to create, not just to create technology for African people, but that's created by us, and that has us in mind, because when you look at and I'm speaking from my experience, my personal experience, when you look at the Israeli scientists at the institute where I work, even those when they finish their PhD and they go on to do their postdoctoral work, and they may go to Europe or go to the United States, they always come back to Israel. And there's this sense of
You're based in
nationalism.
Israel?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's this sense of nationalism that they have to return home and bring this knowledge back home and to build up the state of Israel. So then they go back into these institutes and they have, their research is dedicated to being a backbone and promoting the advancement of the state of Israel. It is a very, very nationalistic point of view that they have. And so that's why Melissa and I, the women involved, we said that we need to have an organization that also is nationalistic from this point of view, that the technology is created by us, for us, that when we have these programs, that those who are the instructors, they don't have that implicit racial bias, because that's another thing that I see that exists here in Israel. There is this blanket belief by most of the Israeli populace here that Ethiopian children, that they don't excel in the sciences because they are inherently intellectually inferior. And so that bias plays out in the school system. And so Ethiopian children is interesting because when you look at the Ethiopians here, and it's so disheartening to see, I see the same parallel situation playing out with them as I do with Black people in America. And that is their push towards sports and entertainment and modeling. So the young women, they're pushed to be singers or to be beauty pageant queens. The young men are pushed towards soccer and now basketball. The same thing the way it plays out in the United States. And again, this blanket and belief that the people here believe that I've heard it said many times, they're good people or they're nice people, but they're just not capable of learning, at a high level. They're not intellectually on par with the Ashkenazi students. They separate them. There was a recent incident just this year where at the kindergarten level, at the pre-K level, where they were segregating the Ethiopian students from the Israeli students. And it was solely based upon race. We're talking about 4- and 5-year-old children. it had already been predetermined, that they're not that they're not capable of learning next to their Israeli peers because they're somehow intellectually inferior. So as
the
Dr.
same exact thing happens here in the United States. It's sad.
Yeah, so as Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she posed the question almost 4 decades ago: who is going to take on the responsibility of developing African children?
Right.
We can't leave the development of our children in the hands of other people. We have to take on that responsibility.
Yes.
That's why we have to have African-centered technology.
Yes, and Melissa, African-centered technology, when can folks expect that to be up and running? How, can families who would be interested, sign up? And I guess briefly as well, what kinds of tools will young people be learning in African-centered technology?
Okay. Well, we plan to launch in January, and we'll be putting out information on social media. Like I said, we're going to use that to our advantage, and we'll reach out to you and other organizations. We're going to build alliances with the Housing Authority. We're going to build alliances with Goodwill Industries. We're going to build alliances with homeless shelters. And first, we have to also tackle the fact that a lot of these kids don't have broadband access, so we're going to try and make sure that they get those through outside organizations. Everyoneon.org is one of the organizations that we'll be working with to ensure that a lot of these homes have affordable broadband access so that they can log on and take advantage of these classes that we're going to be offering. And not just one child in the home, but as many as you have in your home. So we want to make sure that they have the actual bandwidth and the capacity to be able to log on and not have any type of latency or packet loss or any type of going in and out of the network. So that's where we are at this point, and the type of classes we'll be offering. We'll be featuring certain guests in the engineering space. Cloud computing, we'll have a specialty and expert in that. Firewalls, cybersecurity, we'll have an expert in that, which is me. Network design and implementation. We will be showing people how to do site surveys when it comes to wireless infrastructure, how to troubleshoot wireless, how to troubleshoot access points so that you can connect to your wireless, how to troubleshoot the wireless controllers. We'll do simulated type of hands-on experiences with the children. We'll also be introducing them to things like drone technology, how to read the configuration of a drone, ethical hacking. So those are some of the things that we'll be doing it from a bare bones, very, very low, depending on the experience of the child in the technical environment. Because some kids have just been taught how to just log on and use an application. They've not been taught a lot, and that, like we said, that's been done purposely. And even in schools where there is a state-of-the-art facility, Black children are not told by their guidance counselor, to take these courses. They're not pushed into these classes at all.
Yeah, that's very concerning. Tell me more about, then I have another question from the audience. Can you tell us more about cybersecurity? What does a cybersecurity network analyst do?
Okay, so a cybersecurity network engineer secures the network. We're like the internet police. Say you have vulnerability on your network, we perform penetration tests to see if there's an opening where a hacker can get into your network. We look at outdated end-of-life crumbling infrastructure. We will redesign that infrastructure and implement new updated equipment with the latest software upgrades on it. We go in and we do vulnerabilities remediation, which is really ethical hacking. We'll sit there all day and see if we can break the network, see if we can get to a server, an application on that server to penetrate that network. And if we see that we've done that, we'll go in and we'll patch that, reconfigure it to keep hackers out. So we're like the cop that stops you for traffic tickets, but only in the internet sphere.
Wow, so, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
very interesting. I was listening to Elon Musk the other day, and he said, you know, we're hiring. We need software engineers. We're hiring people to pay them to the best of the best to see if they can break into our software, into Tesla software.
Right, and that's what we do.
I mean, we're talking about self-driving vehicles. We're going to see that.
Yeah, and I've done penetration testing for the Nigerian government. You know, you can just sit and you just continuously try to break the network. And you mentioned 5G, the self-driving trucks. That's where 5G cellular technology comes in, and the Internet of Things, for that really, 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 really quick speed and that anti-latency. And I need people to understand that even your postal workers, post offices, they will no longer be valid in the next 20 to 30 years. They will be using drones to deliver that mail. We need technologists that can go in and read those drones, configure those drones, get that data off those drones, create software that directs those drones to where they're supposed to deliver said devices. You know, so it's a whole big world of technology out there, and it is ever evolving. It changes very, 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 very quickly. So we have got to stay on the cutting edge, or we're going to be digital serfdom. We're going to be poor people who digital devices take advantage of.
We can't have that for our children. So we have about 13 more minutes in this segment, and it really sounds like this could possibly be a series. And I feel like we really need to have a series of these conversations to really get into the nitty gritty, and maybe, you know, we can offer you all back in October to have maybe like a second or third show on this, because I really want to get pointed a little bit in terms of, you know, what specifically young people, our children, couldn't be doing to take advantage of being creators. Tiffany kept talking about that, being entrepreneurs, because in this day and age, that's what it's going to have to be. I mean, Melissa, you just highlighted the fact that some of these jobs are going to be obsolete. I have actually warned people, you know, that with COVID and with teachers unions pushing for virtual online only, there also is going to be a mass, they're going to be letting go of teachers at some point within the next 20 to 25 years as well, because most of the education will have like an AI teaching kids on the computer. Now, I'm not an advocate for that, and I think that there is certainly value with still having in-person education, especially for children with disabilities and younger children. But I think that this is something that we need to, like you said, need to be on the cutting edge of, and at least start preparing for the possibility that this is going to be happening. I have one more question, and I also want to make sure we talk about this, because I think we would be remiss not to talk about the dangers of this technological revolution, the dangers of like privacy is gone, right? Like there's no such thing as right to privacy. It's ridiculous. I mean, you know, these people got everything. Like this is a tracking device, right? So let's talk about some of the other vulnerabilities and dangers that you all know as practitioners that people don't know about, that people literally have no idea about if they're not watching a documentary about social networking and engineers and Cambridge Analytica and all of these different people. But one of the questions that came in from one of the audience members on Facebook, Ms. Smith wants to know, is anyone considering or looking into the potential medical impacts, brain tumors, Alzheimer's connections, breast cancer that this push of technology will have on our community? That's not the first time I know that that's come up, connecting cancer to technology. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Anybody can answer.
Well, I do understand that in the health industry, they're definitely going technical. A lot of nurses are starting to leave the bedside and start taking technical courses. And as far as brain surgery and giving x-rays, all of that's going to be, not the brain surgery portion of it, but the x-rays, all of that's going to be artificial intelligence. They're going to use robots to perform x-rays. They won't even need anyone to touch you at all, you know, when it comes to the x-rays.
That's scary as hell, though.
So, yeah, so even if you look at what Amazon is doing, I'm going to pivot to like grocery stores, where they're not even going to have any clerks in the grocery store. You're just going to go and get your basket. You're going to connect you're already going to have an account with them. You're just going to scan your cell phone where that device is on that basket, and just put your groceries in your cart and walk out of the store. Imagine that.
It's already being done on the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah, it's already, yeah, and on the West Coast too, yeah. And even when you look at the sports industry, these technocrats, these big corporate conglomerates, their biggest underlying issue is people. They don't want to pay anybody. So if they don't want to pay anybody, they're going to be using automation. So someone has to fix that automation. And that's just the bottom line.
And that's my worry. With all these entry-level jobs leaving, what are the new next entry-level jobs? And it's fixing the equipment. You know, even at Walmart, up the street, I used to work as a supervisor at Walmart. We had like 12 lanes with cashiers. Now it's down to maybe 6 lanes, and the rest is self-checkout, but due to automation. You know, so now people are losing jobs. Where are they going to go? The next entry-level job is tech. How to fix the computer, how to code the computer, how to keep the computer safe. That is the cycle, right? So trying to help even the fast food restaurants, they have a kiosk. There's no one at the counter. Hey, can I take your order? No, you do it yourself. So the entry-level job will be how to fix that. You know, so we have to start thinking just on a basic level where our world is going in the tech space and how to prepare our youth for that.
I also think that COVID-19 is definitely a precursor to that. It's just speeding everything up even more because now social distancing. So people are, in a sense, going to be obsolete. We're not going to need people to, as you said, you know, take orders or even be at the checkouts anymore because COVID-19, we're not supposed to be even next to one another. So this is just a precursor to all of that. It's just a catalyst that's speeding everything up as we go. And just to quickly touch on, you mentioned some of the dangers. I think because I do a lot of web development and also digital marketing, and it's just really interesting that the wealth of information that is out there I don't know how it works in the States, but in the UK now, because of GDPR laws and the EU and tracking and cookies and that.
What's GDPR?
Oh, you put me on the spot now. I don't know what it means. I can't remember the.
That's okay.
But GDPR laws basically is something that was brought up by the EU to try and sort of counter the information that a lot of these tech companies can gather about us. So if you notice you have cookies in your browser and then it just picks up where you're browsing from, especially if you're browsing from Google Chrome and you're signed into Google, I can tell you what device you're using, where you are, what kind of things you're interested in, what you like doing. I can just find out all this information. So I think the EU in Europe anyway, at least the EU is doing us a service, so to speak, because a lot of US sites have been blocked because they're not going to declare the cookies that are being using. So if I go on a US browser, a US website, for example, and I'm browsing something, I should get a pop-up to tell me what this particular website is tracking, the information they're tracking on me. So some US companies don't do that, but here in Europe, in any country that's within the EU anyway, we can turn that off. We can see what information is being collected. So that's something.
So you have the option to turn that off in the UK.
We do,
Wonderful.
and it tells us how much there's the basic cookies so that they know where you're browsing from, your location and everything, but more detailed, in depth, we can kind of tweak that and say, no, we don't want you to track X, Y, Z, or we're okay with this, but we're not okay with that. But it's a disclaimer that every single website that is getting traffic from Europe has to have, so that you know what cookies or what they're tracking up on you. But I don't think that's available in the US, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nikki. I know you wanted to hop in.
Yeah, I wanted to say that likewise in Israel, you can customize the cookies on when you browse a website. So as Barbara mentioned, you can customize it to say that I don't want, my information to be tracked and what have you. But I just wanted to because I know we're running out of time, I wanted to real quickly touch upon about the health ramifications and the security ramifications, because that's also when we say African-centered technology, we're not just wanting to create technology that's going to mimic the current technology. We also want to create responsible technology. So there is an ideology component to this as well. And that's something, of course, that will come later down the line, but it definitely is a concern of ours. You know, we want to also create technology that's going to be a pushback for some of those concerns, because I myself do have them as well, particularly as African people, because as we discussed earlier, much of this technology is used to target us. And so that is a serious concern that we're going to have to address in the near future. So it's definitely a real concern.
Yeah.
We're not trying to, we're not trying to create a technology like, the atomic bomb. We don't want to create drones that are going to blow up people. That's not the type of technology that we're interested in creating.
But we need to create technology that can dismantle that kind of technology to harm people.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And the last thing, can I just say one more thing before we close out? When we talk about solutions and reaching our children, I just want to emphasize that we cannot be afraid to go into our neighborhoods, the impoverished neighborhoods where our people are the most disenfranchised, the same way these sports and Army recruiters go into our neighborhoods to recruit our children, okay, to benefit their programs and their institutions. We have to have that same tenacity. And so I really wanted to put that up. Very important. We have to go where the people are.
Tiffany, you wanted to come in?
I just wanted to piggyback on Nikki when she talks about the, for me, it's racist, the technology there. In Portland, Oregon, they just banned racial recognition technology, facial recognition technology. With the protests, they wanted to come in and bring this technology. But Portland said, no, it's racist, it's targeting Blacks, it's targeting women, and we don't want it here. So that is one of the ways you push back this technology. You have to go back to the drawing board. It's not right. They're arresting people that don't fit, that are not the criminal, but they fit this facial recognition description, so we need to, and also lastly, we do need to go on the front lines in our community and really knock down doors about technology. It is so difficult for me to even recruit. My program, I only allow 10 girls in per session. That's 6 months. And I'm having a hard time finding 5, and that's with trying to give all the bells and whistles and laptops and everything. It's just, it's the pull of, it's the issue of not thinking technology is important, not seeing the value in technology. Why do I need to learn about technology? I'm fine, So we have to do a better job of educating our community about how important technology is, and that this is a viable pathway, and you can make lucrative money within 6 months, with the certification. So it's hard work, but we all have to do our part in educating our community.
I really appreciate this. Melissa, I want to give you the final word before we wrap.
Okay, I just want to say that the issue is poverty, and technology can help eliminate that. So we want to reach the parents. I'm talking to you parents right now. Hear me and hear me good. We can't get to the children without your help. Don't be afraid of technology. Socialize your children into technology. And I cannot reiterate that. And I'm so serious right now when I tell you that when we come on those football fields and we tell you no, bring him with us. When we go to those cheerleading meets and those cheerleader practices and we say no, get her out of there. Bring her with us. Push your children into technology. Sports, they're not going to make it with sports, because guess what? Sports is going to be AI too. So I know I sound a little passionate right now. It's because I am, and I just need to drive that home. And also make it a priority in your schools. You know,
Right.
when you're in your school and they don't have your guidance counselors are not doing what they're supposed to do with your kids in technology, you don't see the technology courses in your schools, you go to those PTA meetings, you fight and you fight and you fight, you have nothing left inside of you to fight anymore, but you make sure your kids are in technology. And you hold these schools accountable.
That's right. That's right. And that's exactly what we do, is hold folks accountable, empower for the education of our children. Like I said, this has to be a series. This only touched the surface, right, of what we need to be talking about when it comes to technology. And so hopefully you wonderful women from really all across around the world, Nikki, I did not realize you were based, you know, in Israel. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure there's a huge time difference. Same to you, Barbara. Thank you so much. And I want to appreciate that because you're providing a different perspective than what we're normally seeing, at least on our media. I have not been to Israel before. I haven't even been to the UK. So I appreciate you all providing a perspective that many of us here in the States would not know about. But it's still, and it also shows the beauty of Pan-Africanism, in my opinion. It shows the beauty of the fact that we're facing similar fights no matter where we are on this globe, no matter where we are on this globe. And so I just want to let our audience know, because I see a lot of positive comments, a lot of people like, we want more of this. Just want to invite you all to come back in October. We'll plan for this, you know, and try to have maybe topical conversations and really go deep in on maybe one topic on the next show, and then maybe the show after that. And we'll just discuss, you know, how we can galvanize people here in the United States, but also in the UK, and for Black folks in Israel as well. So thank you all so much. Next week, we will be talking to Professor Akil Parker, who is a math genius. He also teaches my son math, and he's going to talk to us about African-centered math and why that's also important for young people. The sciences and technology, you know, is not, and math certainly is not, you know, exposed to racism. There's lots of racism in the field of science and technology. And so there's certainly a different perspective on all of these different fields from an African perspective. So we will talk to Professor Akil Parker next week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, same place, same time. Thank you for joining Grassroots Education Advocacy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Take care, everybody.